So I'm into the next step on my wiring on my LS swap on my 57 truck. And I have the reworked GM harness all connected. And now I'm looking at the wiring that ties into the truck and doing things like making the battery cables and grounding and running all the wiring that goes to the truck itself, that ties the truck to the engine setup. I have the PCM mounted and picked up some materials. I have lots of work ahead of me, so I will plug away and bring you guys with me on the process. So I have this stuff, these little guys, this stuff, this, whatever that is, this, maybe, a lot of odds and ends to figure out for wiring. Fortunately, the gentleman that made the harness for me gave me a little bit of instructions, so I have an idea of where everything's going to go. I have to mount the drive-by-wire pedal computer. Once I do that, then I have to mount the fuse box and carry on with wiring. Hey, it's a new day. I'm not sure where I left off because I started on this and then I walked away from it for some reason. But I'm working on it again. It's the 57 truck and it's the wiring. So what I've done is I've gone through my note from the guy that I got the harness from, and I've sort of just made my own sheet of paper notes. I've gone through and put labels on all the wires, excluding the cruise control because they're a bundle of 4 and I've got to deal with that sort of separately. I think I have an idea of what I'm doing with the wiring. I am starting to decipher what was on the truck when it had the 350 in it. Look back at some old pictures when the 350 was in it to see kind of, to try and jog my memory on how it was wired. And not some shady stuff that I'm going to fix along the way. And I've got a junction block to install and a few other things. So I'll show you where I'm at, what I'm doing, and we'll figure it out together. Okay, so the other day I did some work. I mounted that drive-by-wire box. I mounted the fuse box. So now what I've done today is I found all the wires. Woohoo! Found all the wires, labeled them what they are. As I mentioned, I think in my last video, these wires here that come out of my fuse box are specific to the guy that made my harness, and they could be any color. He just happened to go with these colors. The rest of this stuff is all GM and should be the same. You'll have to go through and figure out how your harness is laid out, or if you've made your own harness. I haven't got into that yet, but so there's a bunch that I don't need. Now I just threw a ball of tape on the end. Now I only don't need them because I've opted to spend a pile of money and buy a Dakota digital gauge set that plugs into my OBD port. So I don't need to run individual wires to these things. So this is my tack. This is my VSS signal and my check engine light. I don't need to run these. I'm going to leave them labeled. I'm going to hide them in the loom in case whatever reason I need to get at them later. What I do need to wire is the brake switch that goes to the 12 volt, and I need to wire the OBD port. This is the green that goes to the OBD port. So I need to wire those. This here I do need as well. This is starter input and ignition input. These are my cruise control that I'm going to run a separate, like a 4-wire deal for, and then I'll have to put them on some sort of switch. And then hiding down here that I couldn't find, these are my reverse lights. Now this truck doesn't have reverse lights on it. I'm not planning on putting them on right now, but I don't want to, abandon them completely in case I put them on later. This is going to go to a fuse block or as close to the battery as possible. Ding. So the truck wiring. Yeah, look at this crap. That's not how you make wiring connections. Even if you're soldering, you don't just put a ball of solder on there and then hope it sticks, because I could play with that for a second and it'll come right off. So how this was run is kind of different. It had a power wire going to the starter, and it had the ground going to ground and ground going to the block. The alternator for the small block Chevy was here. All this wiring went to the alternator and then spliced off and went down to the starter. And the 12 volts from that where it went to the starter came back to the battery. So the battery only had one positive cable on it. I don't think that's the way mine's going to go this time. I am going to have a junction block. I bought a junction block because I need to get power to the fuse box, also power to the alternator. Now the alternator I can run down to the starter and do it the exact same way as I had it before, or it was done before, but I haven't really decided what I'm doing there yet. But I do need the junction block because I need power for other things, like my fuse box. And I don't want to have like 4 wires all going to the lug on the starter, or 4 wires all going to the lug here. It just doesn't look very good. So I have a junction block. Let me see. I have a junction, it's kind of large, but I have a protected junction block that's going to mount somewhere. So looking at this wiring, it's a disaster. So this is the 12 volt to the starter solenoid, and this should be, theoretically, because it's the only one left, and it looks like it would go down to where the starter would be, that that's the wire that would go to the trigger the starter solenoid and give it power to turn over when you turn the key. So what I can do to test that is I can hook this, probably just hook this alternator end up to the positive terminal, turn the key on, and see if I have 12 volts when I'm cranking. It should be 12 volts at crank, on the crank position on the key. That's my thought. So this green one goes to the white on my green, turns into white. And what did I decide that was? I decided that was ignition power. So when I turn the key on to the on position, that should have power. So theoretically, if I connect this red wire to the positive terminal, when I turn the key on, this green should be live. When I turn the key to crank, this orange should be live with 12 volts. I think that's kind of what I need to find out next. Other than that, the truck wiring is kind of okay. It's been updated and everything, and the stereo wiring is a bit of a mess, but the rest of it is kind of okay. So I do need to go through and run the cruise control wiring into the cab. These can stay out here, but these 2 wires here are also going to have to go to the cab, because like I said, this goes to the brake switch, and this is going to go to wherever I mount the OBD port. It's really not a lot of wiring. This is my MAF and ground. This is, well, that's just wire loom. This goes to, what does this go to? Didn't I decide I knew what this went to? This goes to something. I'm not sure what. I'll have to look in my little LS book to see where that goes. Maybe I'm just gapping it for right now. Oh, maybe that went to the air conditioning that I don't have? That would make sense. It'd be the right sort of length. Let's look and see. So, there's my phone. 4-wire connector, throttle position sensor. No. MAF I already found. Maybe it's the throttle position sensor. No, that's this already hooked up. I will figure it out, and I will let you know what this is. Let's see what the air conditioning one looks like. I think I mentioned this in my last video. If you have the internet, which you do, because you're watching me right now, and you're doing one of these jobs, go to ICT Billet's website, get access to a color printer, and print this manual. It's the ICT Billet LS swap manual. Now, it is a big sales pitch for their all their parts, but it also gives you really good information like this. There's a whole bunch of information about oil pans and the different type of oil pans and stuff. The one I used was the Top Street Performance, which is a clone of this Holley 302. So get this. It's a good thing to have. So math, I'll figure it out. Math, throttle position sensor. Maybe it's the throttle position sensor. I don't know. I'll have to figure something out and figure out what it is. When I do, I will let you know. Okay, if I haven't said this before, this is the math wiring. I thought this was something else, and I thought the wire that I had on the other side was the math, but the wire I had on the other side actually goes down and underneath, and now the truck is up. I'll show you where that goes. It goes down here, and then I grounded it on the oil pan because there was a ground tab, and I thought that was a good spot. I zip tied it. I think from the factory there's like a little bracket that goes here on this oil pan, or on the factory oil pan, that this wire kind of runs through. Well, because I don't have that, because I'm running this TSP, I chose to take it back a little further and out of the way of the steering linkage. So I zip tied it to the ICT motor mount, top and bottom, came across, zip tied to the bottom of the clamshell here. The plug that was there plugs in. There's like a, I think it's a crank sensor that's on the back side and behind the starter, some sort of sensor, and the little wire went to my solenoid, my starter solenoid. So, and then I think the only other wire that I have to feed to the starter is the power itself, straight to the battery. This is the O2, and then there's another one for the other side. So now I can get back to, now that I figured out where that goes and solved that crisis, I can put power to the battery and figure out where everything else goes. Okay, when you're by yourself, you have to improvise. So I have my meter set up. I need to see if this is getting power when it cranks. It should get 12 volts when it cranks. I think that's the wire for it, the orange wire. I checked to see if I have 12 volts on the green wire when the ignition's on, and I don't. So I got to see what that's all about. But I definitely have, when I power this, alternator 1, which loops back, it powers everything. So this is the power for the truck, basically. Which is also connected to this, which is a giant gong show. So anyways, I have my meter set up on DC. I have power into the truck. Now, I should, theoretically, when I turn the key, should get 12 volts there. So let's see. There you go, 12 volts when I'm holding the thing on start. So that's good. That's what I was looking for. So that's when I hold it. So this is power on. Signal light's on. When I hold it in the start position, which means I'm turning it all the way like that and holding it there, that's the signal to the starter. And that's the 12 volts that I'm getting there. So that's good. That answers that question. The other wire, I'm not sure what's going on with that. I'll have to look at that. That might be something else. I need that signal. So that has to connect to whichever one I labeled here. Ignition starter input. So this is the one that I need when I crank. So that's got to connect to this purple wire has to connect to that orange wire. So that's that. So I'll label that orange wire over there, and I know what that is now. The ignition in, I'll have to find, I need 12 volts steady when the ignition is on. So that's my next mission after I disassemble this catastrophe and label it. Okay, I found the second piece to my puzzle. So now I've labeled this guy as starter in, which matches the starter in for here. It should be starter crank, but it doesn't really matter because I don't need the label after I'm connected. So this ignition 12 volts that I want, I have found the volts. There's 12 of them. And they come from this wire here that was red, but it's been painted black. And when I turn the key off, I have nothing, millivolts. So, and then when I turn it on, I have 12. So that's good. So this is my ignition 12. So wire by wire, I'm figuring out where everything goes. You can see it's kind of a catastrophe. I've had to use some booster cables. Like I said, when you're by yourself, you kind of got to rig stuff up so it'll work when you're doing things. So I can probably start making a loom that goes back around to that side. Or at least I can maybe bring this orange guy underneath this lip to come here somewhere and then pick them both up in the same loom. I also need to run this guy over there, and then I need to run one from the alternator, which is a heavier wire. On the Malibu, I ran it right down here with the injector wires and the fuel rail. I'll probably do the same. That was kind of nice and tidy. So I'll probably run that over there as well. I got to figure out where I'm going to mount that junction block and then what I'm putting to the junction block. Believe it or not, it's getting closer. It's getting a lot closer. Just in case you're wondering, when I put that ground on the oil pan, I did retorque the oil pan. Don't want anyone catching that. The interesting thing, if you watch my last video, I'm going to, that video goes live today. This video will go live in a week from now. I'm going to label that one part 1 and this one part 2, because that one was just laying out the harness and positioning everything. This one is connecting everything to the truck. So theoretically, by the end of this video, I should have this whole mess sorted, the cruise control wires into the cab not connected, the fuel pump wire ready to go, the fan connected, these guys, all this stuff, everything that I need done to basically run the engine. I've had a bunch of people ask me already, when are you going to be ready to run it? Well, I don't have a fuel system yet. I've got to install that still. So that'll be the next big chapter after this wiring. I successfully made a mess, as you can see. Cappuccino's gone. So I've got the, show you what I got going on. I've got this all loomed in here. Let's just tape for a second because I'm going to make this a bigger loom all the way across there. I've got the fuse in. This number 8 wire that goes to the fuse is crimped and soldered. I have my ignition 12 volt and my starter crank soldered, heat shrunk. They're all heat shrunk. I'm going to run this behind the battery, and I found a good little spot in there for my junction block. I checked to see that the hinge isn't going to interfere with it. It's a nice little spot to hide it. Doesn't look that crazy. So I need to loom this all up and put lugs on it and tie into there. And then the alternator will also tie into there. Actually, I shouldn't loom this up just yet, because I can probably bring the alternator wire up into it. That's what I'll do. I'll bring the alternator wire back from this post. It'll tie into this, which is going to carefully sit nice and tidily under there. And I'll run it back there too, so you won't even see it. It'll go to that junction block. And then the only thing that will go from this battery terminal
is going to be 1 feed of number 4 wire. That's going to go to that junction block. And I think it's number 1 I have. Then I'm going to make my own starter cables. So that'll be all fine. I think that's going to be good. What else did I do? I had to go get wire because I had number 4, I didn't have any number 8, so I had to go get some red number 8. I like this marine grade stuff. It's pretty good. So I'll tidy all this all up. It'll be nice. And then what I'm going to do here, like I said, I'm going to make one big loom for all this and tidy it all in. Make it all go in there nicely. It's coming along. It's coming along. The nice thing is you just don't want it to look like a big cluster with a pile of stuff everywhere. You want to keep it as tidy as possible. And you want to leave your notepad down there on the crank pulley. That's a good spot for it. So I'm going to wrap it up for today because I've got some things I got to do. And I will hit it again either tonight or tomorrow. And try and knock off some more of this this wiring. Jeez, I'm tripping all over stuff. You see I got rid of that bird's nest. It's coming. It's really coming. I think it's not going to be too bad. And then in the engine bay after that, it'll be trying to figure out how I can get rad hoses to go where I want them to go. And put the exhaust manifolds on. That sort of stuff. Once I get rad hoses going where... The interesting thing about that is once they're done and they're routed where they're going, then I can work on the air filter. And the air filter is can be a bit of a project to try and figure out what fits. At that point, before I get into that, I'm probably going to have to get a hand from somebody to get the hood back on because it's important to make sure that it closes. That'd be good, wouldn't it? All right, I'm going to carry on and then I'm going to clean up and pick up with you tomorrow.
Been working away. It's the next morning. I've got the alternator wire done. connected to the terminal block. Got the, what else do I got? Oh, the power to the truck. Also to the terminal block, and the power to the fuse box. So that's those 3 red wires that I was playing with. So now I guess the next thing is to go, I gotta get power to the terminal block from the battery, and power to, I guess I need to make starter and ground cables. I'll probably do that. That's good fun. And I have a little more wiring that I gotta take into the cab. I have to secure this up there, but that's gonna be nice and tidy underneath that lip. These wires, I don't know what they do. I gotta figure that out before I just get rid of them. Terminal block is in there and everything's sort of going to it. I could probably, this wire is probably a little long, but I don't really want to waste any lugs, so I might just reshape it a little bit. The other ones were pretty good. I was trying to leave the battery in so I could kind of see how it was all going to lay. I could have pulled the battery back out and got a more accurate measurement. The ones that have to go into the interior is still the cruise control wires and the OBD and the brake control switch. Fuel pump goes to the back of the truck. One of these is the fan that I'm going to use. One of these is going to get spared for if I have 2 fans later, because right now I only have 1 fan. It used to have this little deal when I had the 350 in it for a temperature sensor to sense when the fan should come on. It's kind of neat. But I don't need that now, so I'm going to get rid of that. Getting there, getting close. I think I'll maybe look at doing the positive cable and the feed that goes to that junction block, which then in turn goes to the alternator and all that other stuff. I think I'll look at that.
Okay, here's another update. Been like an hour here and there because I've had a lot of stuff going on lately and been kind of busy. So this hammer doesn't belong here. That's weird. I made my battery terminals. That's kind of cool. So there are my battery cables. This one goes to the back of the engine. This one goes obviously to the starter. Goes down through this here to the starter, and then there's another number 4 wire that goes up to that junction block that I had there. So power side is done. What do we have left? What do we have left here? We've got this crap here and this other cruise control crap. So the cruise control stuff I'm probably not going to get finished right now in this video, but I will get it done, I promise you. Oh, and I have to take the ODB and brake switch wire into the interior, so I got to do that. I also have to clean stuff up because I keep making a mess. The engine is wired. Just the ODB, the one fan, and the brake light switch. So I'm going to go as far as hooking up the fan. The fuel pump is going to be run separately in a different video, whatever you want to call it. That's going to cover my fuel system. And right now the big deal is just getting these into the interior. These guys, as I mentioned, I'm not using them. This is for the check engine light, the TAC, and what's this other one say? The VSS. They're not going to get used because I'm going to plug the Dakota Digital gauge set into the ODB directly. Okay, that's going to be it for this one. I have more to do, but not very much wiring. The engine's wired. I just have some stuff on the truck to do. So this one's for the fuel pump, as I mentioned before. I did wire in the fan, but I ran into a little bit of a bird's nest here with some old crap and some old horn. This old horn that's got these. I don't like these fold-over connectors. These are like a. To me, they're a in case of emergency deal, and there's like 1, 2, 3 different pieces of wire there. So I had to move that horn when I installed the fuse block. So I'm going to mount that horn down here somewhere and fix this wiring up and then re-loom this probably another night this week, but I kind of got to wrap this up. A friend of mine's borrowing my gantry, so I need to get it to where he can get at it. I ran the wires into the interior, so color changed on them. They're labeled though, so that's good. One of them's for the OBD port, which I'm probably going to put like here somewhere. No, well, no, actually, I might hide this. Not too much because I want to be able to get at it with a scanner, but I'm going to hide it probably a little bit because that gauge thing plugs into it, so I don't really want that to be a problem. So my old temperature sensor I got to get rid of. So I got lots of little things to do. So that's going to be it for this one, I think. And then this is the MAF. So the one that I thought was the MAF on the other side wasn't the MAF. That goes down to the crank sensor. These wires were something from the truck, and I don't need them. So I got to look and see, just verify that I don't need them. If I don't need them, then I'm going to pull them back into the cab and get rid of them. You can see I tidied up all the loom there. This is going to get covered by the engine cover. This is a speedometer cable that needs to get removed because I have VSS now. And this is an old oil pressure gauge that's also going to go. I'm pretty much wrapped up wiring. I've got very little left to do, but I'm out of time for today. So that's pretty good. I'll probably put this stuff here, this loom that goes into the cab, and this guy here. Like I might combine them and put like a big 3/4 loom that goes over top of all of them and tidy this all up. But when I do all that and when I have it all tidied up, I'll give you guys a full run through. But that's all the connections.
So I hope if nothing else that you're getting a little bit of information out of this on just some wiring practices. And if you don't like what I'm doing, then you can take what I'm doing and use it as a what not to do and not do that on your project. But so far, I think everything looks pretty good. Little background, I am a licensed electrician, but that has zero bearing on automotive. All that means is that I should know how to use electrical tape. So anyways, the battery lugs are done. I'm quite happy with the way that crimp tool works. I hope that I've included that in detail enough that you guys can see. The other thing that I do that I was mentioning is any butt splice or any stake-on connector, like an end connector, that push-on connector, I put heat shrink on it. It's good because if the connector fatigues on the wire, like if it starts to get a little loose, the heat shrink will actually hold it and give it a mechanical, it makes it a mechanical connection and an electrical connection, if that makes any sense. It's not going to hold any weight, but it will be less likely for the connector to wiggle around and break off if it's heat shrunk. And actually I can show you what I mean. You can see on this guy here, I heat shrink over top of the connector. You can buy connectors that are heat shrinkable as well, but I like to just use the regular blue, for this size, blue connectors, crimp it properly with a proper crimper, not a cheap Harbor Freight one or anything. That's one tool that you want to buy. A decent one is a crimper. And then I heat shrink over it. Like I said, if I wiggle this, it's not just going to break off and break all the strands of the wire. There's a little bit of mechanical support from this heat shrink. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I really do. I'm 2 years at this now with YouTube, and I'm actually very close to my 100th video. So I'm not sure if I'm going to do anything about that or if anyone cares, but I care. I'm thankful to be able to do this. I'm thankful that that people actually watch this. Some people actually watch this. So thanks, and if you like the content, want to see more of my stuff, please subscribe, hit the notification bell, all those things. Oh, I bought another car. Imagine that. I'll have to tell you about that another time. Thanks for watching.